Sigma is a science fiction think tank. We've been working with the US government and NATO and some other organizations over the years. And some of the people on this stage have worked at previous... I'm sorry. It's better with the slides, but we'll go on anyhow. To my left here is Ms. Kathleen Goonan. She's going to be speaking on radical literacy. Next, and she's a professor. Dr. Catherine Asaro, with a physics degree, PhD from Harvard, and Mr. Marco Green. Now, it turns out Marco Green's title of his talk is Gaming Rules the World. I thought that was an exaggeration until we got to this conference. We didn't realize there were so many people in Saudi and the Middle East who were into gaming, and he's a world figure among these folks. And speaking of that, about 3.5 years ago, Mr. O'Green and 2 other Sigma members addressed a NATO 2030 Futurism Conference. During that conference, the Sigma people introduced these NATO future planners to the concept of texting, leet language, and social media. They had never heard of it. Well, that's what we do. We brief people on what's going to happen in the future. About 3 months later, which was exactly 3 years ago this week, I was at another conference in Washington, D.C. I held up a cell phone. I said the texting and social media made possible through the cell phone, when applied around the world, means that some countries are going to see overnight massive social change, maybe revolutions, just because of the cell phone and the media. I actually anticipated another nation in the Far East being the first to witness this. But 3 years ago this week, when it happened in Tunisia, when it happened in Tahrir Square, in Cairo, and the Arab Spring began because of cell phones and text media and social media, I was not surprised. The people whom we briefed should not have been surprised either. The conference is about entrepreneurship. The title of my portion of this is Disruptive Technologies, Disruptive Minds. I think they go together. I think an entrepreneur's got a disruptive mind, get together with a disruptive technology, and something happens. It can be good, it can be bad, or it can be both. Entrepreneurship imperative is the motto, the theme of this entire conference this week. The imperative they're talking about probably means the governments and societies need to have entrepreneurs, but the entrepreneurs themselves have imperatives. Entrepreneurs want to change things, whether they're born or they're made, depending on who you listen to this week. Entrepreneurs want to bring change. But more than that, they want to own the change. They want to own it financially, emotionally, passionately, intellectually. They want to own it. I contend that new technologies are the best way to provide entrepreneurs with both of these, to bring change and to own it. New technology, though, often disrupts the existing status quo. The first explorers make the rules. This is part of that control. Entrepreneurs like to make the rules. They like to run things. Look at 1 million internet and web-based companies around the world, and that's what you'll see. What do I mean by disruptive technologies? Technologies that not only do what the inventor or the developer or facilitator wanted to do, but also unforeseen and unintended consequences. If you saw some of the other talks today, you saw that the printing press, Mr. Mutawa talked about the printing press. Gutenberg just wanted to make money. He said, this is a fast way to make money, printing things up and selling them. He didn't realize that he changed the entire history of Western Europe and changed the entire history of the world. That was not intended, but it happened. Automobiles are another good example. In the United States, at least, automobiles were intended to replace horses. Horses polluted terribly. They were filthy, they were expensive to own, and had to be replaced often. Of course, then we invented automobiles. Unintended consequence of automobiles was the fact, in the United States at least, teenagers were able to leave home away from mom and dad together and go out and do things, some good things and some bad things. It changed the labor market. People in the country went to the cities and vice versa. Unintended consequence. The internet, World Wide Web, we've already seen that, what that means. Cell phones, we've just talked about that revolution that's continuing around the world today. Now, what's next? New technologies, new industries. I believe the way to prepare the entrepreneurial mind and entrepreneurial ecosystem is to use what we do when we write here. We're all entrepreneurs. We're writers. We have ourselves and our ideas to sell. If we don't put it on the paper or on the web, it doesn't sell. So we use what I call science fictional thinking. Next slide. There we go. Everybody at this conference has used thinking outside the box. I say that means without limits. However, it doesn't mean without discipline. Science fictional thinking, when we put together a story or novel, a game or movie, sometimes we destroy entire civilizations and rebuild them from scratch. So we think, we recognize, associate, correlate different trends, patterns, and anomalies. We build stories around those. The same thing works when you're trying to plan a new technology or a new industry. We are informed by science and history. We look back at history and see how discovery and development changed the world. Entrepreneurs need to look at the same sort of phenomena. And we're not bound by any kind of limitations. There will be a science in the year 3000. And to paraphrase Sir Arthur C. Clarke, science fiction writer, that technology in the future will look like magic to us now. So let's give some concrete examples of science fictional thinking. 20 years ago, I wrote an article called Manufacturing Magic. It contained a little story in it about ordering stuff from the web and having it built in an appliance in your home. Last week at the Consumer Electronics Show, they started selling those. Now they can build toys and they can build shoes. Well, let's go one step ahead in the next 5 years. Imagine if you could wear that on your back and carry something in your hand not much bigger than a cell phone, and you could receive and build solid objects. Every street corner, every village could become a Hong Kong. I worked in Hong Kong a few years ago, and it's the most productive place in the world. Everybody hustles all the time. Imagine if you brought that to every person in the world. I'm going to skip over some of this because I'm running short on time, but you can read them later and we can discuss them. Let's look at some real science fiction things, evolutionary technologies. The only one I'm going to mention is the neural interfaces with the computers and the web. I wrote a story years ago in which a ring would become your interface with the World Wide Web. If we get into new kinds of energy, like zero-point room temperature fusion or the ECAT coming out of Italy, and the world starts using petroleum for something else other than fuel, that could have a major impact here in this society. I'm just going to mention one of the disruptive discoveries. Last year, you had a panel on UFOs. Stanton Friedman and Jacques Vallée, whom I know, and Michio Kaku talked about the impact of alien life. That would be very disruptive on everybody, except religions. I think religions would accept it very well. The rest of it, I'm going to leave to my colleagues now and let them elaborate, and they'll probably go off in different directions. I'm first going to introduce Dr. Catherine Asaro, PhD in physics from Harvard, and science fiction writer, and she does a lot of other things too. Catherine?
Well, thank you, Arlen. Could I have my PowerPoint presentation brought up on the screen? Yes, thank you. I'm going to talk about, in particular, the emerging technologies of artificial intelligence, robotics, and cybernetics, which is a combination of, you might say, AI and robotics with biotechnology. I would like to turn your attention to that lacy design at the bottom of my slide. That is in some ways going to be a symbol of these technologies that we're talking about. It looks perhaps like an arabesque design you might see in architecture or as part of artwork. In fact, that image is the plot of a mathematical equation known as the Mandelbrot fractal. And the point that I would like you to take here from that is look at the lace on that form. It is a replica of the larger overall form. And in fact, those little replicas have lace, which is replicas of the overall form, and it goes on forever. If you are able to magnify that image 1 billion times, you would still see these beautifully complex, intricate geometrical structures. That's what the technology that we're going to be talking about to you is like. It has incredible complexity. We will only be able to give you a sketch of the overall structure in the limited time that we have. If we were to talk a billion times magnification, we would still be finding potential applications, commercial especially, for using these technologies that we're talking about. All right, I would like to talk first about artificial intelligence. Imagine the most powerful computer that you know of, the calculating ability of that computer, the memory that that computer has, its diverse ability to do all these applications, everything your iPhone does, your BlackBerry, whatever it is that you use. And then imagine that you could wed that to the creativity, the intelligence, the ability to think, the emotions, the psychology, the self-awareness of the human brain. That's what we call artificial intelligence. And in fact, it already exists in many rudimentary forms. Scientists, computer scientists in particular, have been working on artificial intelligence for decades. In the future, where will this take us? And let me give you just one example, one small piece of lace from that Mandelbrot fractal. Supposing that you're an executive at a company. There's a lot you need to get done, a lot of analysis, market research you need to do. But you have to sleep, too. Unfortunately, human beings still have to do that. So you tell your artificial assistant, perhaps you've even named it, perhaps it even has a personality. You tell it what you need, and then you go to bed. Okay, in the morning you get up, and in the meantime, this program has gone out on the web and done all your research for you at speeds millions, even billions of times more than what a human assistant could do. It's researched companies all over the world for you. It's put it all in easily readable form that you can go over as you're getting ready to go to work. It's telling you what it's found. And then it comes up and says, you know, there's a few sites I think you should look at. This isn't what you asked me to do, but I've been adapting my program based on my knowledge of your personality. And I don't think you're going to like what these sites say. They are a violation of your privacy. And this is something that we're going to have to worry about more and more in the future as we become more interconnected. So our artificial intelligences will be able to see what we need to know, even if we don't tell them. And then it'll say, I have some ideas about how you can take care of this problem. It'll tell you about some competitors it thinks you should be aware of that you never even knew about. And this is just one tiny piece of what these type of technologies can do. And also, it's not only, we don't only want to think about what can it do for us as entrepreneurs, but how can we use it? The whole other side of this is somebody has to make these artificial intelligences. Somebody has to figure out how to market them, how to get them out. Somebody is going to find a bonanza similar to what happened with Facebook, what happened with Microsoft, what happened with AOL. Those companies, those businesses that are able to position themselves to take advantage of these disruptive technologies will probably have immense success in the future. All right, I'm not going to have a lot of time to talk about virtual reality, but I would like to describe what it is. It's the idea that you can create a reality with your technological apparatus that is indistinguishable from the actual reality that we live in. There are immense potential in education, in the military, in the commercial sector use for virtual reality. It means creating sight, sound, tactile sensations, taste, sense of smell even, that are so believable that you think you are in the scene, the universe that's been created. For example, to go back to our artificial intelligence example, your AI assistant tells you, you need to meet with these people in a conference now. I think if you talk to them now, you're going to get a step up on your competitors. Well, at the moment, you're shaving or putting on your makeup. You're not in any position to meet with people. So a virtual representative of you goes into this virtual reality conference room that your company has set up. And while you're communicating with these people, you're shaving, but your virtual representation, which is indistinguishable from you, is talking to the people in the conference room. The possibilities of what you could do with this kind of technology are almost limitless. And they are either real or imaginary universes that you can create. I know Mark is going to talk some about gaming. I mean, you can just imagine what gamers could do with this kind of reality. And Kathleen will be talking more about education. This is going to change the face of how we teach people. I'd like this to... could you go back one slide? Robotics, I won't have a lot of time to talk about. I'm sure all of you know the classic science fiction idea of a robot, the metal man. In fact, our robots, which already exist in rudimentary form today, probably won't look like people. Your car will be a robot. You will download your artificial intelligence into the car. It will communicate via global positioning services with other cars. They will form a grid. Traffic will be controlled by the cars, while you sit in your office, which is actually your car, and continue to do your work. Cybernetics is melding these technologies so that the human being takes advantage within themselves of the technology. You know, if we create artificial intelligences that are faster, more intelligent than we are, I don't think we'll settle for being second-class citizens. So we will want to create bodies, potential robotics that allow us to take part in these technologies. Because we're limited on time, I'm not going to talk in any more detail on that. I've listed a few of the novels I've written making use of these ideas and some credits of the people that helped me. But I would like to stop now so that my other members of the panel have time to talk.
Thank you, Catherine. I would now like to introduce Professor Kathleen Ann Goonan, educated at Virginia Tech, now a professor at Georgia Tech, and she's going to talk about radical literacy.
Hello. It works. Hey, my name's Kathleen Ann Goonan, and I would like to thank the Global Competitiveness Forum and all of those who enabled Sigma's presence at this fascinating and stimulating conference. It's been absolutely wonderful. I am a science fiction writer, and let me get my slides started. I write about futuristic possibilities based on our present scientific information and about how the changes postulated in my stories and novels might affect individuals, society, and eventually what it means to be human. My novels have been shortlisted for the Arthur C. Clarke Nebula Awards, and my last novel, In War Times, won the prestigious John W. Campbell Award and was the American Library Association's Best SF Novel of the Year. My seventh novel, This Shared Dream, is a utopian vision of what might happen in education in the future, among other things. And it postulates a new form of education that might change us radically in the future. I base these new emergent schools on our growing understanding of the brain. And this novel gives a glimpse of how international distribution of inexpensive schools will help children from all cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds compete and lead in tomorrow's world. I'm also a professor of the practice at Georgia Institute of Technology, one of the world's foremost universities with an international imprint. I teach creative writing, science fiction, and courses illuminating the intersection of science, technology, and culture. And I can't think of anything more interesting and fascinating than that intersection. Georgia Tech is committed to designing the future through creativity, entrepreneurship, and service. Radical literacies are modes of understanding, interpretation, and production using mediums, some old and some cutting edge, in new and empowering ways. Although I'm known for my nanotech quartet, which changed the world in definitely very radical ways, my two latest novels, In War Times and This Shared Dream, which postulate the development of Q, which I shorten from quantum intelligence, are much more down to earth. The 20th century was the century of physics, when we learned things about the nature of our physical world that we're still trying to understand and use for positive ends. The 21st century is the century of the mind, in which we're beginning to understand the complexity and potential of our own brains. Eric Kandel, a Nobel laureate, has done fundamental research about the basis of memory, which I use in my books, and the field of neurology has grown tremendously in the past decades. Just as we have conquered the most infectious diseases, we ourselves are on a path to understanding the roots of not only what is best about ourselves, but what is the worst about ourselves. This is information that we can use to possibly end war, as if war was also a disease, and improve the lives of everyone on the planet through the release of wealth that path would provide for advances in health, education, and human rights. Developing a pedagogy based on scientific knowledge about how we actually learn is essential to our progress. Dr. Maria Montessori, the first woman to earn a medical degree in Italy in 1896, was the first person to observe scientifically how children learn. She realized that our rapid development at an early age, when our brains are growing quickly and we're eager to learn, is because of neuroplasticity, a word that's lately come into great vogue and with good reason. She developed the world's first science-based curriculum to give children the opportunity to learn to their fullest potential. Because in one of my several careers, I was a Montessori teacher, I started a school that grew from 8 to 100 children, toddler through elementary, in 2 years. I saw firsthand how revolutionary the world's first science-based educational system actually is. 100 years after Montessori's discoveries, we know much more about how children learn, and through the use of technologies such as functional MRIs, which show processes in the brain in real time, we can move forward rapidly in our understanding about what works educationally. It's time to take advantage of the fact that between the ages of 2 and 5, any normal child can effortlessly learn to read, write, add, subtract, and multiply. Division and subtraction are a little more complicated, but not much so. Much more easily, in fact, than at later ages when particular neuroplasticities are lost. Thus, they internalize the tools through which they can investigate the world on their own. It's time to go to the next stage of science-based education in order to optimally use our enormous, untapped human possibilities. I propose the creation of an inexpensive, easily distributed school that incorporates materials and interfaces that will enable children from all socioeconomic backgrounds to learn to their fullest potential. This will require teams of architects, engineers, educators, public health experts, nanotechnologies, gamers, and investors who will design and put into production a physical building inexpensive enough to be widely distributed to the poorest communities, a new emergent school so advanced and effective that even wealthy parents will want their children to have this advantage. I propose a partnership between universities, governments, NGOs, private investors, and other agencies to help develop a school that works and that, through nanotechnology, can grow in different environments and adapt to any culture. These will be flexible environments, community-based schools that will answer each community's needs in a local and therefore effective fashion. They'll enhance any community in which they're placed. They'll enable children to compete in a world of multiple, overlapping future developments which they themselves will create. The students I teach at Georgia Tech are engineers, some of the brightest in the world. I teach them science fiction, which opens their minds to new ways of thinking, and I teach creative writing, which gives them the tools to express out-of-the-box concepts that involve actual characters so that ideas lose their sterility and become humanized. These are the kind of young people who will internationally join to enhance this embryo of a vision and many other visions and make them real. Allowing investors the opportunity of partnering with Georgia Tech with its enormous technical resources through underwriting an endowed chair in science fiction studies is one way to help advance the entrepreneurship, leadership, and radical ideas that will lead to greater opportunities and possibilities in our future. And this is just a kind of collapsed vision of what I've been thinking about in the past few years. And I gave the initial talk that was the seed of this idea at a Sigma event in Washington, D.C. For the Joint Services Small Arms Project. And out of that vision grew this shared dream. And I'd be happy to send an ebook to anybody who emails me of this shared dream. And there is a lot more on my webpage and in my blogs about the uncollapsed versions of the possibilities of our own neuroplasticity, not only for children, but for adults. And I certainly envision drugs that will enhance our adult neuroplasticity, which could be dangerous and also great fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next would be Mr. Marco Green, Air Force Academy graduate and gamer, as I mentioned, who's known to quite a few people around here. That took him away from us all week. So this is the first time we've seen him in a long time. Mark?
Thank you, Arlen. I'm going to stand up. It's a little easier for me to talk about this. And I'm going to go in kind of a hurry because we're running through
Closer.
a little bit of time here. Computer games will rule the world. Now, you look at this sort of thing, you're going, nah, it's not going to happen. That's your knee-jerk reaction. I don't blame you. It's mine, too. And I've been in and out of the game industry for 25 years. Still on here? I've been in and out of the game industry for 25 years. And during that time, I made some really wild estimations of what's going to happen in the future. 18 years ago, I told people that at some point, 1 million people would be subscribing to one game. The people I was talking to were all in the computer industry and in the online industry. And those people looked at me like I was crazy. Move forward 5 years after that, and a game called EverQuest came out. It hit about 400,000 players. A little farther forward, and a game called World of Warcraft came out. Now, many people have heard of this. I'm going to throw out a number right now. 6 million years. That's the cumulative time that people have played World of Warcraft. 6 million years. That's an astonishing amount of time. How would you like to have that for any project you had? Now, what this game is called a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, and I realize it's kind of a mouthful. And this is one of those virtual technology games, virtual world game. Real briefly, for those who haven't played it before, what you do is you create a character and you're living in this virtual world. You're interacting with computer-controlled creatures and people that the computer creates and designers create in the background. At the same time, you're playing with many people from around the world. So what is it about these games, and this game in particular, and this style of game, that makes people put 6 million years of time into it? And this is one of the concepts I want to bring forward. It's the behavioral science behind it. Think about how many times a day you get rewarded. You know, somebody smiles at you, somebody gives you a compliment, you accomplish something, you finish a task, you get paid, whatever it is that makes you happy and gives you a reward. Happens 10 times a day, 20, 30. In a computer game like this, you may get 20 rewards in 1 minute. There are reward structures going on all the time. And on top of that, these are more complex than normal. This isn't the simple, I do something and I get a cookie. You do it one time, I get another cookie. It doesn't work that way. Again, a very basic reward structure system. And this is something I recommend to entrepreneurs, that they go learn some basic behavioral science, because there are certain variable reward systems that are extremely compelling. And that's why you get something like 6 million years of playtime. Now, I was hoping that I'd have more time, but we don't have, just because there's, like everything else here, there's so much that we could go into it. So I can't give a lot of explanations of where I think this is going to go, but it is going to push out into the real world, and there are some reasons for it. Again, the behavioral science model. you're going to start seeing and already see certain corporations that are rewarding people in kind of the overlay of virtual space on a real world. If you go out and find a product, they'll tag it. You'll get reward structures in place. They give you rewards for finding what they have. Partly because this is more cost-effective for a company than if you just put a simple presentation online. We've already talked a little about when you interactively do something, when you invest in it, it has more of an impact on you. So if you go out and start looking for for products, it's more effective for the advertiser. That's the first way it's going to go out. Like I said, I'd like to give more real-world examples, but we're going to run a little bit of short time. So I want to go into one other area, and this is kind of an overlap with yours, where I think computer role-playing games have an extremely powerful addition to the world of education. Right now, the educational system, or most of the educational system, work off of kind of a presentation system. They go to one point in space. They're teaching everybody at one time one thing. But the problem is no student learns things at the same speed. Nobody does. Let me give you a little example real quickly in basic arithmetic. 1 and 1 is equal to 2. Now, if we start teaching that, and this group over here is your advanced students, we may say 1 and 1 is equal to 2, and this group will go, yeah, I get it, and they're right there. They get it, they have a feeling of accomplishment, they want to keep learning. This group over here, the teacher's still going 1 and 1 is equal to 2. You can't stop and give an extra reward to this group over here because you're still teaching to this presentation. You're not interactive. You're not teaching at the optimal level for each student. 1 and 1 is equal to 2. 1 and 1 is equal to 2. So this group is going to finally start to get it and go, yeah, I kind of get it. Then you're going to get over here to the slower students. Sorry, I'm sure you're all actually capable of 1 and 1 is equal to 2, except maybe you, since we've had a conversation. But the teacher has to spend this extra time going 1 and 1 is equal to 2, 1 and 1 is equal to 2, because if they lose you now, you're behind and you're never going to catch up because it's a basic thing that you have to keep moving forward. And the worst part to me is this group over here who got it right away. You guys are getting bored. You're frustrated. You're going, I learned something. I want to keep going. I'm excited. You're not only not getting a positive reward, you're getting a negative reward because you're sitting there waiting for the next thing to come. So let me give you a different example using a computer game. I want you to imagine real quickly something along the lines of Harry Potter. Okay, so you've got a little avatar on the screen, and that's to represent your character. And there are a variety of different ways you can represent it. Did I just kick something over? Okay. There are a variety of ways you can represent it. It could be superheroes. It could be any sort of setting you want. This character there'll be another sort of mentor character in the background, the teacher, and this teacher is going to come up and say, welcome to the world of mathematics. Today you start your journey on being a master of arithmetic. And a little something is going to come up screen. The real simple thing is going to go 1 and 1 is equal to 2, and this will be presented, flashed up, giving some extra graphics to entice the student. 3 doors will appear in front of the student. 2, 3, 4. Choose one. Choose any one. You don't even have to tell which one it is. The student, particularly smart ones over here, are going to go over, choose the one that says door number 2, and they'll go, congratulations. There'll be trumpets will blare, there'll be flashing lights, and all sorts of things you see already in computer games, things that will excite a child. The mentor character will go, congratulations, you've earned 2 points, and he's going to reinforce that structure towards you becoming a master of arithmetic. Do you want to continue? Well, yeah, just got a reward. So he goes, what's 1 and 2? And you can see how the structure work. Now, when you put some of the behavioral models in a computer game, it gets extremely compelling. So not only is it fun, but you keep driving the student forward. They enjoy the whole process more. They learn at that speed, and they keep going. You don't stop them. It's not like when you're presenting to one speed on education as a presentation, this whole group, by the end of the day, could be up to where we're talking about division and multiplication. This group over here may go 1 and 1 is 4. you'll still reward them. You go through and say, no, that's not quite correct. 1 and 1 is 2, and you'll flash up the screen. And we're going to give you a 1-point reward to your master of arithmetic because you tried. And then we're going to offer them options, including going back and immediately trying again. Again, I'm just kind of doing a quick overview on the whole thing. One of the big points of this whole presentation is going to be computer gaming has a competitive advantage over reality. Those reward structures, those variable reward systems are something you can't do. You can't go to someone at your office and give him 50 rewards in one day. It's easy for a computer. And this is the sort of thing that can move out into the common workspace. We talk about these other technologies where you're overlaying essentially a computer game structure on the real world. Actually, I don't have enough time to do much else because we're running out. So I'm actually going to cut it even shorter and just go down to one quick thing. Computer games will rule the world. You still might not buy into the concept. You need to buy into this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody. Do we have any questions from the audience? Is there a number or something? This lady right there, right behind number 6.
Hi, my name is Tasneem. I'm a game developer, and I just wanted to ask, what are the obstacles against, applying virtual reality in video games and gaming in general? Is it the cost, or is it the technology? Thank you.
Anybody want to answer that?
Well, I think it's what are the things against it? The technology is already out there for pretty much anything we described. It's just going to keep getting better and better. There are a lot of costs to it, and that mostly depends on how in-depth you want your structures, how tight you want the graphics to look, things like that. So most of these things are pretty simple, and they're just going to keep getting better because the computer game industry is driving it all forward, and it's going to get cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah, actually, about 15 years ago, I had a virtual reality software company, and the thing that really limited immersion and everything was the expense in primitive equipment. And I went to a conference a few years ago with the Air Force, and they were saying the same thing. Nobody had yet developed the goggles or the contact lenses or something that would allow you to be totally virtually immersed in a world yet. It's coming. It'll be here in a few years, but I thought that 15 years ago too.
I would also add that probably educational philosophy is one of the main obstacles to such a vision about using computer gaming in classrooms, because everybody uses them already outside of classrooms.
Number 5.
Hello. We have a big nanotechnology, for example, grant from the government to do research. We have, in Saudi, in the Arab world, and there are like incubators for nanotechnology, for biomedical. But I think it's a given that a good science fiction culture really fosters entrepreneurs and some future scientists and really enables them to think these big ideas and try to execute on them. But I think if we all brainstormed, we'd only find maybe 1 or 2 real science fiction writers who write in Arabic. A lot of the kids, they play video games, they love The Matrix, but they haven't really connected personally to science fiction and how real it can be. My question to the panel is, what would you think would be the best way to foster science fiction in the Arabic language, because most people can't talk English? Are there any other experiences in other places of the world where something like this is happening?
That topic came up at dinner last night out at the museum with a person who wants to write Arabic science fiction. And so I think the best way is to get your people interested in that and then write science fiction based from your cultural background. We write stuff based on American and British, But I would love to read something brand new, for example. And the best way to do that is, where's Yasser? Yasser's left.
Back over behind
Oh, there he is. I'll point out this guy. Stand up. Talk to this man. He is the vanguard of science fiction in the Arabic world. He talked to us a long time about it last night. He had the same feeling that you did. But when you do it, please translate it into English so I can read it too. or at least Spanish, okay? And the lady right there next to you.
Hello. My name is Sarah Doualan. My question is for Dr. Catherine. Since the representation of the cognitive thinking of a human mind is one of the biggest challenges in the advancements of AI, how do you think such challenge is addressed, and what are the possible, in your opinion, discoveries regarding that matter?
So are you asking what I think the challenges are of creating an actual artificial intelligence that mimics the human mind?
Yes.
I think part of the problem is most of what we're doing now simulates emotion. If an AI is to become self-aware, it has to be aware of itself and its own emotions. It's possible to map the human brain. We can use magnetic resonance imaging technology to get a map of how the neurons work. And you could download that map into a computer. I think the difficulty is once you start the computer evolving the development of the processes that lead to thinking, we don't know enough about how the brain evolves them yet. And I think that's one of the biggest evolution. Getting a computer to mimic a particular neural structure is a lot different than getting it to mimic the evolution of thought.
okay.
That's where I see the problem.
We have time for one last question. Number 7 over here, I think.
Yes. My question is, actually, I'm glad that you came up with the overlapping about gaming and education, because what I'm seeing now, I just was telling my friend here that I'm really pessimistic about the gaming industry and its use for too much wasting of time. And I have a brother that spends maybe 9 hours a day playing with his iPad and 3 hours learning. So my question is, why isn't gaming interacting with education so kids and young men can play and learn at the same time with their gadgets that is in everybody's hand? Thank you.
I've had trouble hearing, but I think why is it young men who play games so much can't learn as well as play at the same time?
Why is the gaming industry and the education industry interact with each other to make products that can be fun and entertaining at the same time, and educational at the same time?
Not catching a lot of it, unfortunately.
Is it clear?
I actually think that they do, but the programs that I've seen are mostly for younger people. But I must say that at Georgia Tech, there's a huge contingency of people. There's actually a degree in basically computer gaming, and I think that generation is the one that will be doing those kinds of things because they will know intimately what's required. They've grown up in that culture, so they will know how to do that. And I think, don't you, Mark, that we'll see things rapidly moving in that direction in the next few years?
Yeah, I think it's not just education, but it's even one of the comments I was going to make of the entrepreneurs is I think you can expect where somebody who's grown up with a gaming culture is going to actually start his company up with a gaming, computer gaming structure behind it. So you do reward systems, even your business practices.
All right. Well, thank you for answering. And again, thanks, Sagia, for bringing us over from the United States for this. We have had a wonderful week. We couldn't have been treated any better. So shukran to all of you.